Hello and welcome to this Bitcoin Magazine interview. I am Vlad and my guest today is Connie Gallippi, who is the founder of the best and longest lasting Bitcoin foundation in the space, which is called BitGive. And it has been covered by Bitcoin Magazine back in July 2013. Even Vitalik Buterin, when he was an editor of Bitcoin Magazine, covered it. And since then, I can see right now, if I scroll along the Bitcoin Magazine website, I can find about 5 pages of articles. The foundation is very influential. It has some very famous donors, and it has accomplished quite some important goals for development and for humanitarian action. So Connie, I'm very happy to have you, and I'm glad that I get to get a piece of your mind and understand how BitGive works and why Bitcoiners should give money to BitGive so that they help the rest of the world, like developing nations.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so am I. And I guess I can share this piece of information that my editor, Christy, was also psyched about the idea that we do an interview.
Yes, I love Christy. We've known each other for a long time. I can't quite even remember how long it's been, but at least since 2015, probably even longer. She's always been a wonderful supporter of BitGive.
So how do you come up with the idea of allowing Bitcoiners to donate some of their coins so that they end up allowing some other people from developing nations to get access to clean water or to education or other causes?
Well, it was early on in the industry when I first thought of this idea, and I was at the Bitcoin Foundation's conference in 2013. It was the first real Bitcoin conference, and going to it, I was there really because my brother's company had just got its first seed round, and I didn't have any like professional aspirations to be involved in Bitcoin. I was at a senior level role in my former career, but being in that energy really made me realize, I was interested in the technology already, but the energy of that event really brought it all together. It was a very special event. A lot of things started there. You may have heard of other things that started at that event. And, it had all the right ingredients for success, and not just your typical success, but what I saw was the potential for something like the next .com boom, and there were investors there. We were in Silicon Valley. There were a lot of developers, and there were a lot of entrepreneurs with really exciting ideas. And so to me, at that moment, I realized the potential. And my former career was working with nonprofits. A lot of it was about getting them funding. And so I made that sort of marriage of the two in my mind, that, there was a gap maybe in this industry, and it was so early, there were probably lots of gaps, but one that I could fill around, providing an opportunity and a foundation for giving back and to have social impact as part of the industry from the beginning.
I feel like the hero's journey in Bitcoin usually revolves around bringing your formal life into this new space, which is exciting and provides all sorts of opportunities. So to me, it's always fascinating to hear stories from people who basically say the same stuff, that they were successful in their previous endeavors, but they figured out ways in which they can use Bitcoin, and they just gave it all away and started anew with something which seemed risky, but eventually paid out.
Yes, exactly. It is. There are maybe some younger folks that have coming into the industry earlier in their careers, but I think a lot of like founders, co-founders, CEOs, and folks with experience under their belt saw this as a huge opportunity, especially after maybe experiencing what happened with the .com boom, seeing it as another similar type opportunity of scale to bring skills to and to get involved in the very beginning was very exciting. So I think, now looking back, I felt that way too, but I don't think it was as conscious at the time. It was more like just jump in and out of excitement, like, let's see what we can make happen,
Yeah, and I can see that some of the founding donors are BitPay and Jeff Garzik and Roger Ver, who at the time was still Bitcoin Jesus. And also, who else did I see? Mm-hmm.
There's quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the folks that were around back then and are still around, are quite a few. We call them the OGs, But yeah, when I first had this idea at that event, BitPay was quite supportive from the very beginning in helping us actually really pull the pieces together to get it off the ground, and that was extremely helpful. And they're still extremely supportive of us over all the years, and we've gathered lots of support along the way. So it's been, thanks to many different donors and companies that have done a lot of pro bono work for us as well, including Waxman, which is how you and I connected.
Right. And the question that I wanted to ask you revolves around the idea that 2014 and 2013, when you first started, were a bit different in terms of approach and understanding of Bitcoin. At the time, people did not see the value proposition to be in the definition that it has today. So nowadays, people think more in terms of saving on the long term and possibly passing some Bitcoins to their, I don't know, sons and whatever successors that they have. So how would you convince these people who are into hodling and not spending any of their Bitcoins to donate?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, so definitely a lot has changed since back then. And like you said, Vitalik was the editor of the article when we first launched. So Ethereum wasn't even an idea at the time. But what we feel is that, yes, I mean, I understand the hodling. I totally get it. The potential for this tech is huge. But if we don't focus on real use cases and demonstrating those real use cases, it largely becomes mostly a speculatory exercise. And speculation in by definition is that people are expecting that the tech will have value, right? Not just value of a coin, but the technology itself, right? So to us, it's very important to use it and to show what the benefits are of the technology, and also from a nonprofit and donation and charitable standpoint, it's such a relevant use case to a mainstream audience that they can relate to, they can get excited about. It's something they already do. In most cases, people, at some point in their life, they've made a donation to a nonprofit. And a lot of them understand, some of the challenges in the current mainstream philanthropic system. So to me, it's a wonderful opportunity to reach a mainstream audience as well as demonstrate a use case for the technology itself. And you have the added bonus of, in the process of doing that, you're having social impact in real time, right?
I was thinking right now that you came with BitGive at the same time when the Silk Road was still around, and Bitcoin did not have the same reputation on financial markets as a solid investment. It was still very early, and people still saw it as this type of pirate money or something. So how did you actually manage to save the reputation of Bitcoin? Or were there any skeptics who said, are you trying to launder these Bitcoins that criminals use on dark markets and stuff like that?
I think, to be honest, it's still a question that comes up in the press and, from a lot of mainstream people. There's still a lot of misinformation and, things like that out there about Bitcoin. But yes, back then it was even less, of a knowledge base from the mainstream. So there were a lot of questions and there was a lot of uncertainty. And when articles and things came out about things like Silk Road, we rode the roller coaster ride through all of that. I mean, I remember all those things and how much it affected the price and thinking like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do as a charity, because we hold a lot of our assets in Bitcoin and, largely we've benefited from that. But when you're watching these headlines and the effects that they have on the price, and you're trying to run an organization off of, assets in Bitcoin, it can be quite interesting. But yeah, things like that. And when there were all these questions about who Satoshi is and, all kinds of things that have happened in the industry over the course of the time. I mean, positive and negative have affected the price for sure, and the stability of the industry. But I think for the most part, we're past that stuff at this point, I hope.
So there are people who get paid in Bitcoin, who trade Bitcoin and generate tax events whenever they deal with Bitcoin. So do they have any kind of tax exemption if they donate to BitGive?
Yes, absolutely. So we are a 501c3, which in the US means we're a tax exempt charity. And so that gives us two different benefits. One is, for us, we don't have to pay on, like I just said, we hold a lot of our assets in Bitcoin. As they go up, we do not have to pay any taxes on that. So it's amazing because it's not coming out of our pocket, it's actually growing, and then we're able to do even more good with the same Bitcoin over time. To a donor, they can see that benefit, of course, like it's a perpetual evergreen donation. But also, you could do a traditional write-off where it just reduces your taxable income. But what's more interesting to me actually is offsetting capital gains with a donation in cryptocurrency. So if you work with a charity like us with BitGive, that's a registered tax exempt organization that accepts cryptocurrency, you can calculate, now would be a good time to start, really, for folks to start looking at what their gains may be as December approaches. And you can offset those gains by donating in crypto. So instead of giving to the government for taxes, you can give to a charity. And then since you're doing it in cryptocurrency, you could choose a charity like BitGive that holds in crypto, and it continues to grow from there. So to me, it's a beautiful thing. I think a lot of people don't quite understand all that. And especially now, as things are becoming more serious at the regulatory level for tax reporting, I think people are looking for more solutions like that.
So of all the campaigns that you have had to help, I don't know what the right word is, but people in need around the world, which one was the most memorable and made you feel like you're doing something which is different and really helps people and makes a difference in the world?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a tough one to answer because they're all extremely amazing NGOs doing really powerful work. And to marry that with this technology has been very inspiring. And it's taken me to many places in the world, working with lots of NGOs, like small to large, different kinds of missions. So that's a tough question. I don't know.
Okay, well, let me ask you specifically about each case, like the tornado relief in Alabama.
Oh, that one was more of a simple one, where we made a contribution directly to, oh gosh, I can't think of the name right now. Rubicon.
Rubicon, yeah. I'm looking at the website, so that's why I know.
So long ago, sorry, I spaced it for a second there. Yeah, so for that one, we actually had another campaign that we were focused on at the time, and it was sort of, this natural disaster popped up with the tornadoes in the Southeast, and we were very, very young early on at the time, and we didn't have a whole lot of resources. So instead of trying to take on a whole nother campaign like real quickly overnight, we decided to make a contribution to Team Rubicon directly in Bitcoin, because back then they were one of the few organizations that actually was accepting Bitcoin. And they had veterans on the ground helping with disaster relief. So we felt like that was the best way we could respond quickly and be supportive.
And you also built a well in Kenya for the Shisango Girls' School.
Yes. Yes, that's probably one of our most well-known projects. We have a lot of materials around it, and it was one of our earliest, I think it was our second campaign ever. So another, NGO that was very early on involved in Bitcoin and accepting Bitcoin, the NGO is called The Water Project. And we took on the case of fundraising enough money to build an entire well at a school. And And we were able to accomplish that goal, which was very exciting. And it ended up, they always have a pipeline of projects that are ready once they have the money that they can apply to and get started. And we didn't know, exactly where the money was going to go until we had raised the money and they married it with a project that was ready. And I was so excited that it was a girls' school. It was just so cool. And I actually got to go there, which was really exciting as well. We don't get to visit all of our projects because, as you can imagine, it costs quite a bit of money. So that one was definitely very impactful to be able to be there, especially as they were finishing the well. We were there as the first water started to flow, which was very exciting.
I will also ask you about the Medic Mobile project, in which you gave 640 cell phones to medical personnel in Nepal.
Yes, yeah, that was an exciting one too. Also one of our earliest partners with Medic Mobile. And it was interesting. So what we originally were doing was a sort of a generic fundraiser for Medic Mobile. And then as that was going on, the earthquakes hit in Nepal. And so there was quite an effort going on there. And as our relationship grew with Medic Mobile, we decided to push those funds towards that effort. And they already had teams on the ground, and it was a very exciting time for them to be able to be already there and help. And their teams need mobile phones, because what they do is share medical information with doctors and nurses and patients in these very remote areas. So the funding went to supply those phones to their healthcare workers in Nepal.
So I come from a background in political science, and I did quite a lot of study on United Nations and all of their activities. And I actually got to visit the European headquarters of United Nations in Denmark, in Copenhagen.
Nice.
And as I was speaking to people who were working there, they were always telling me that their plan is not to make a career out of being in the UN, but to start smaller organizations that follow some kind of humanitarian purpose. And at the time, I did not understand why. And they were always complaining about the bureaucracy and about the inefficiencies of the United Nations. So now that I see a small foundation actually doing a lot of stuff and having quite an interesting portfolio, to me, it means a lot. And the fact that it has been done with Bitcoin, it's impressive.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It's definitely been a lot of fun, and we learned a lot. And yeah, the UN is extremely large and complex. So I can imagine, that you would hear those things from folks. They also have, a lot of impact and are a very powerful entity. But yeah, I think it probably is really challenging to make things happen quickly with all the bureaucracy, like you said.
So what is the most recent project? Because I see on the website that the projects are updated up to 2016.
Yes, well, so we have quite a bit that's happened since 2016, but it's all on our new platform called GiveTrack. So our projects prior to GiveTrack are all on that. Probably you're looking at a map that says early projects 2013 to 2016. And then we built a platform. And so if you go to givetrack.org, you can see a lot more projects that we've had since 2016. So we first rolled out a minimum viable product of GiveTrack, and we had a handful of projects on that we called our pilots. And now we have a version 1 of GiveTrack, and there's probably, I think there's between 10 and 12 different projects on there since we launched that in December of last year. So we've actually been able to scale and do a lot more than we did in the first few years because we have a platform that accommodates multiple projects at one time.
This is interesting. You're helping a school, not necessarily a school, but Afghani schoolgirls to learn how to code, and also helping children in Chile to have sports.
Yes, exactly. Pardon me, because I'm suffering from a bit of a virus. But yes, so the Afghan school is a girls coding school that's in Herat, and it's with Code to Inspire. So that's the NGO that runs the school. And we raised funds on GiveTrack for computers for their new class that's coming in this year. So they're starting to actually apply those funds now. And we should be hearing and seeing some exciting results really soon. And if you follow Code to Inspire, you can see all the wonderful things that are happening at the school, what the girls are learning about and being trained in. And actually, as they get trained up and they become more proficient in coding, they're actually being hired out onto projects. So they're getting real experience and pay for that experience, which is really cool. So we love that project. And then you mentioned the one in Chile. That is with Desafío. And obviously right now there's some really unfortunate things going on in Chile. But we have been working with them for the past year. And they have a number of smaller projects that the funds that they raised on GiveTrack have gone towards. And it's providing sports equipment and the ability for folks who can't afford it, like low income, at risk, disabled, folks who need an outlet, a healthy outlet, but don't necessarily have the resources to buy sports equipment. In some cases, it's future Olympians that really have a lot of potential, and they just are low income and don't have the right equipment. So that's pretty cool. There's a lot of smaller projects that's funded.
So is anyone able to add a project which requires funding on the platform?
Well, it is open, but we do have, a vetting process. So we work with NGOs, so it can't be like an individual. And the NGOs have to be registered and in compliance, either in the US or in their country of establishment. So there is some standards and requirements that have to be met. Once those are met, then we work with NGOs to find, the best types of projects that we think will be successful on the platform, as well as, strategy around how much they should fundraise for that we think will be successful, how to present and promote the projects and things like that.
Right. So let's say right now that at the end of this video, after I edit it and I publish it on Bitcoin Magazine, is going to have a great impact, and people will figure out where to donate their money at the end of the year. And you raise, let's say, $10 million in Bitcoin. Do you have?
Wow, that would be awesome.
Do you have any kind of charities that you have in mind for these money?
Well, that's a really great question. I mean, that is way more money than we've ever received, even when the price was at 20K. So that's a lot. But, as far as like projects, I mean, we love the organizations we've already been working with. If we have gaps in the fundraising on GiveTrack, we could use it to fill those, but there's a lot more opportunity with $10 million. So we also have a lot of plans to build out GiveTrack, and it's currently in a version 1, so there's a lot of things we would like to do to improve it. And we'd like to be able to seed the projects on the platform to get them going. So something like a $10 million fund would help with that. So there's a lot of things we could do with $10 million. I mean, that would be beyond anything we've ever even remotely experienced. So, yeah.
I was just curious if you have any kind of charity that you always wanted to work on, but never had the opportunity due to lack of funds.
There's quite a few. I mean, we finally got to work with Code to Inspire. That was something I had been wanting to do for years. So we'd like to support them more. I think with an amount of funds like that, what I'd love to do is approach some of the larger organizations that are more challenged in how to integrate this technology. For example, like Save the Children, we have been working with them from day one. They were our very first campaign. And they've always been very excited about the tech and, willing to push the envelope a bit and try things. But it's definitely, they're a huge organization, and it's definitely a big undertaking for them. So it'd be great for us to be able to come to the table with resources to work with them more. UNICEF as well, they just started working, more actively in Bitcoin and blockchain. So maybe, you know, we could tackle some of those larger organizations that already have, you know, amazing missions, amazing success, you know, rates, you know, exceptional projects, but also, you know, interest in the tech itself.
In the last 6 years, we have seen lots of Bitcoin companies just come and go, and this space has been quite dynamic in this regard. And what is the secret of BitGive's longevity?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. You know, it's a great question.
Yeah, in 2017, there were all these ICOs and projects that tried to raise funds, possibly for charity reasons. I'm not sure what happened to the tokens in the end, but they are not around anymore, but BitGive is. So what's the secret for that?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that you recognize that, because it's taken a lot of work to you know, to establish it, but to survive through all of these ups and downs, especially as a nonprofit. So it's one of the things we're the most proud of, is that we just are still here. The secret is, I think, you know, I'm the founder and I've been the executive director all along, but we've had a lot of support from the industry as well and board of directors. And the approach really all along has been, you know, conservative, even though we're pushing the envelope and pioneering in a, you know, in most cases, but conservative on the sense of how we choose to make our investments. And so the team has always been very, very small. We've somehow been able to do all of this with a very small team. And as we did get some resources, we were able to grow the team, but we've still been extremely strategic about how we do that. We've grown largely through contractors, so we can expand and contract as needed. We've been very careful about what we choose to spend those funds on, so that we have a long-term investment that will pay off, like building GiveTrack in pieces, you know, starting with an MVP, moving to a version 1. We're very slowly, you know, strategizing on what we should invest in to build out that platform. What kinds of technology do we use? Like the choice to stick with the Bitcoin network, as well as like side chains and second layers that we think have a long life, like RSK. We're not being, you know, experimental in that sense. I mean, we are to a degree. I think all of it's very experimental, but we're being very careful about, you know, where we choose to make those investments. So it's been a combination of a lot of things, and also the benefit of holding in Bitcoin has allowed us to last quite a while. We don't cash out as soon as we receive it. So lots of different things have come into play, but I would say it's been a lot of strategy and conservative outlook, and all about the long term. You know, what can we do that we know will be here in 5 years and isn't going to just go away?
Okay. I'm really impressed by your effort. And just for the record, the proceedings that I will be making from this interview will be donated to BitGive. It's not a lot, but it's still something.
That is wonderful. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, don't worry. Don't mention it. It's the least I can do to this world. And I really like your work.
Oh, thank you. I so appreciate that. And, you know, tell as many people as you can about it. These interviews are really awesome for us to have, excuse me, to get the word out, you know, and expand like our exposure and how many folks know about what we're doing. So thank you.
So I'm not sure if I have any more questions at this time, but I'm happy that we talked, and I'm happy that you got to present the activity of BitGive, as I'm sure that not many people are aware of what's happening. So thank you, Connie.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.